Welcome back, Cowboys Nation, to another episode of the 8 and 88 podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne, and sitting right across from me is the film guru himself, my partner in crime, Hank. Folks, we have a massive show for you today. We are completely bypassing the surface level talking points and doing a forensic, page-by-page deep dive into the internal strategic document detailing the Dallas Cowboys' 2026 schematic, financial, and statistical outlook. Hank, after the absolute heartbreak of that 7-9-1 finish in 2025, the front office couldn't just sit on its hands. This offseason has been a structural earthquake.
You aren't kidding, Dwayne. Let's call it exactly what it was. Last season was a systemic catastrophe on the defensive side of the ball. When you surrender a franchise record 511 points in a single campaign, you actively sabotage what was a top 5 MVP caliber offensive engine. The regression was so profound that it forced an immediate top-down organizational pivot. The Band-Aids are off, the coaching staff has been completely remodeled, and the front office is trying to walk an impossibly tight rope between immediate championship contention and long-term financial survival.
And that structural overhaul begins with the termination of Matt Eberflus and the hiring of 34-year-old Christian Parker as the youngest defensive coordinator in the history of the franchise. Hank, you and I have been begging for schematic modernization for years. The static, predictable, middle-of-the-field closed architecture is finally dead. Break down the film for the folks at home. What are we actually looking at geometrically with Parker taking the reins?
Geometrically, it's night and day, Dwayne. Under Eberflus, the Cowboys ran a highly rigid, single-gap 4-3 base that leaned heavily on classic cover 3 principles. It was a defensive coordinator's dream because there was no post-snap mystery. Opposing quarterbacks could look at the pre-snap alignment, identify the single high safety, and instantly map out their progression with near certainty. It also forced hybrid, highly athletic defensive players into rigid gap assignments, which completely paralyzed their natural processing speed. Now enter Christian Parker, coming straight out of the highly coveted Vic Fangio coaching tree. He is introducing a fluid, modern 3-4 defensive front that bases everything out of a split safety, middle of the field open pre-snap shell. What this does to a quarterback is dynamic. You look pre-snap and see 2 deep safeties, but the moment the ball is snapped, Parker triggers multi-planar coverage rotations into quarters match or cover 6 principles. The quarterback is forced to hold the ball for that extra split second to diagnose the coverage, which is exactly when the pass rush gets home. Parker stated his philosophy perfectly. He wants an environment built on intent, discipline, and violence.
Intent, discipline, and violence. I love it. But to make a 3-4 system function efficiently, you cannot have penetrating single-gap defensive tackles trying to shoot standard lanes. You need absolute monsters in the interior who can 2-gap, absorb double teams, and command the line of scrimmage. To accomplish this, the front office completely gutted and rebuilt the interior defensive room. They traded away former defensive tackle Osa Odigizua to the San Francisco 49ers for a 2026 third-round draft pick, which cleared out $4.75 million in much-needed salary cap space and paved the way for scheme-specific anchors to dominate the snap counts. Hank, let's talk about the massive twin towers we now have in the middle.
It all starts with the mid-season acquisition of Quinnen Williams. When he escaped New York, his transformation was instantaneous. In just 7 games with the Cowboys, he generated an astonishing 19 quarterback pressures, more than doubling what he did in his first 8 games with the Jets. Even though his aggregate sack total hit a career-low 2.5 last year, his advanced metrics are elite. He logged a 43% run-stop win rate, ranking 5th out of 204 qualified players across the entire league. Parker is going to unleash him as a 3 technique or a 4-eye defensive end, letting his lateral explosiveness completely overwhelm isolated guards and tackles on stunt concepts.
And right next to him is the anchor of the whole operation, nose tackle Kenny Clark. Acquired in August 2025 via that massive blockbuster trade with the Green Bay Packers that also secured us 2 future first-round draft choices, this 6'3", 314-pound man is the definitive zero technique this scheme requires.
Clark's primary job is to absorb the center and the play side guard on every single interior run concept. By swallowing up those double teams, he keeps the off-ball inside linebackers, like DeMarvion Overshown at the Mike and the newly acquired D. Winters at the Will, completely clean from climbing offensive linemen. It allows them to scrape sideline to sideline and fill their run fits cleanly.
We also have to highlight the edge rotation, because transitioning to a 3-4 means you are relying on stand-up outside linebackers rather than traditional hand-in-the-dirt defensive ends. The front office went right back to the Green Bay well on March 11, 2026, trading a 2027 fourth-round pick to bring in veteran pass rusher Rashan Gary, who immediately swapped his jersey number to number 7. Gary put up 47 pressures and 7.5 sacks last year, and he provides a violent, edge-setting presence against the run while possessing the fluidity to drop into shallow zone coverages when Parker dials up simulated blitzes. Behind him, we're counting on a year 2 breakout from sophomore edge Donovan Ezeruaku, whose 6'2", 255-pound frame is much better suited for a two-point stance than the rookie role he played last year. Plus, retaining veteran Sam Williams on a 1-year, $3 million contract keeps a key asset on the roster. He had 4.5 sacks last year and is completely indispensable to our new special teams coordinator, Nick Sorensen, after racking up 687 special teams snaps over his career. Add in our 2026 first-round selection, Malachi Lawrence out of UCF at 23rd overall, and Parker has a designated fastball to throw into the mix on obvious passing downs. It is time to stop looking at the highlight reels and start looking at the financial ledger. Welcome to Dwayne's Minute of Truth. Let's strip away the optimism and look at the brutal reality of the Dallas Cowboys front office math. Right now, as we speak in 2026, the front office has a manageable $5.5 million in working cap space for standard in-season operations. But if you project this ledger forward to 2027, the franchise is staring directly into a catastrophic impending salary cap cliff. Current mathematical models project that the Dallas Cowboys will be $15.5 million over the league's salary cap ceiling in 2027, with a mere 63 players under contract. The team is entirely devoid of roster elasticity. And let's be completely blunt about the root of this gridlock. It is the contract structure of quarterback Dak Prescott. Despite previous restructures, Dak remains the highest paid player in the history of the game, pulling in an annual average value of $60 million. The front office backloaded this deal to maximize the immediate window, and now the bill is coming due. Dak carries a $43.51 million cap charge in 2026, which explodes to an unmanageable $76.03 million in 2027, climbs to $86.03 million in 2028, and leaves a parting gift of $24.43 million in dead cap during the 2029 void year. Here is the absolute kicker. The front office is operating from a position of absolute zero leverage. Airtight no trade and no franchise tag clauses expertly negotiated by Todd France and Athletes First give Dak unilateral control over the future of this organization. A simple restructure right now only kicks the can down the road and inflates the future numbers. The only mechanical pathway out of this prison is a multi-year contract extension to flatten out the annual hits. But handing a massive long-term deal to a quarterback who turns 33 this July and carries a history of lower body injuries is an extreme franchise-altering risk. When you add in the fact that George Pickens is playing 2026 on a $27.29 million franchise tag and demands a market-setting long-term extension alongside CeeDee Lamb's projected $46 million cap hit in 2027, you are talking about allocating nearly $75 million annually to just 2 wide receivers. It is a mathematical apocalypse, and it will require historic draft efficiency just to fill out the bottom of the roster with cheap rookie contracts.
And Dwayne, when you lay out the numbers like that, it really emphasizes the urgency of this 2026 campaign. The window isn't just closing, the financial ceiling is physically collapsing on the front office.
It absolutely is, Hank. But while the front office plays cap gymnastics, head coach Brian Schottenheimer is managing an offense that remains a stable, top five elite unit. Let's look at the absolute gold standard of this passing game, the dual alpha wide receiver dynamic. The blockbuster trade that brought George Pickens to Dallas in exchange for a 2026 third rounder and a 2027 fifth rounder has completely broken the defensive geometry of the NFL.
It's an impossible compromise for opposing defensive coordinators, Dwayne. In his inaugural year with us in 2025, Pickens asserted total alpha dominance, leading the team across every major receiving category. Thriving as the boundary X receiver, he commanded 137 targets, hauling in 93 receptions for a staggering 1,429 yards and 9 touchdowns, earning a well-deserved All-Pro nod. He set a franchise record with 5 individual games over 130 yards and a touchdown, and ranked top 5 league-wide with 13 explosive receptions exceeding 25 yards. Pickens absolutely destroys cornerbacks in isolation on boundary vertical routes and back shoulder fades. Defensive coordinators will have to roll their structural coverage shells over to bracket him. They will have to play cover 2, cover 4, or cover 6 to protect the deep boundary numbers. And guess who benefits from that spacing? CeeDee Lamb.
Exactly. CeeDee had a statistically depressed 2025 campaign because that severe high ankle sprain cost him multiple weeks and limited him to 14 active games. Yet, he still put up 75 catches for 1,077 yards and 3 touchdowns while maintaining a 28% target share when healthy. Because Pickens forces the safeties to stay split and deep, defenses cannot drop a strong safety down into the intermediate middle of the field or into the slot to double team CeeDee. Lamb gets clean single coverage leverage matchups over the middle, where his route running precision and elite yards after catch capabilities completely unlock this offense. It's only the 4th time in the history of the Dallas Cowboys that the team has featured 2 1,000-yard wideouts in the exact same season.
The depth chart behind them is highly efficient too. Ryan Flournoy has solidified himself as the clear wide receiver 3 in Schottenheimer's 11 personnel packages, putting up 475 yards and 4 touchdowns last year, including 2 massive 100-yard performances against the Jets and Lions. Plus, his willingness to function as a physical perimeter run blocker keeps our wide zone concepts alive. Cavante Turpin added 396 yards on 26 catches and serves as a vital pre-snap motion asset that allows Dak Prescott to instantly diagnose man versus zone coverages before the snap. The only clear mistake in that room was the trade for Jonathan Mingo. Sending a 2025 4th-round pick to get him has blown up in our faces. He suffered a PCL sprain in the preseason, failed to integrate into the offense, and was a healthy scratch down.
We also need to keep an eye on the tight end room. Jake Ferguson remains the ultimate security blanket for Dak against zone blitz packages, catching 600 yards worth of passes on over 100 targets last year. But Luke Schoonmaker has been an alarming disappointment. 14 catches for 132 yards is completely unacceptable for a former second-round pick. He's currently locked in a brutal training camp battle with undrafted free agent Michael Trigg just to save his roster spot, while Brevin Spann-Ford safely holds the inline blocking role.
While the skill positions are humming, we have to talk about Warren Sharp's analytical modeling, which ranks our offensive line 18th overall heading into training camp. That caution is entirely centered around the left tackle spot. Tyler Guyton's sophomore tape in 2025 raised massive, immediate red flags. He finished the year with a trash 57.5 overall PFF grade, ranking 71st out of 89 qualified tackles. But his pass protection was a total liability, a 50.0 pass blocking grade, ranking 81st overall. His lower body mechanics broke down constantly against speed to power rushers, which compressed the pocket and rushed Dak's internal clock.
And the depth behind him is terrifying, Hank. Nate Thomas was statistically the worst pass blocking tackle in the NFL last year, posting an atrocious 31.6 PFF grade and surrendering a pressure on over 10% of his pass blocking snaps. The front office drafted Drew Shelton out of Penn State in the 4th round, and he's already bypassing Thomas for second-team reps in minicamp. If Guyton struggles early, Schottenheimer might be forced to execute the emergency option of kicking all-pro left guard Tyler Smith out to left tackle, which completely compromises our interior stability.
And you don't want to move Tyler Smith because the interior of this line is an absolute fortress. Cooper Beebe is healthy again after missing 6 games last year, and Tyler Booker has been an absolute revelation at the right guard spot. As a rookie, Booker allowed a microscopic 5.9% pressure rate across 400 pass blocking snaps, ranking 13th overall among all NFL guards. But his impact on the run game is staggering. When Booker was on the field, our rushing success rate climbed to 43%, with Javonte Williams averaging 4.6 yards per carry. When Booker sat, that success rate plummeted to 37.8%, and our running backs were stuffed at or behind the line of scrimmage an astounding 16.2% of the time. That dominant interior space allowed Javonte Williams to put up a career-best 1,201 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns on 252 carries last year, securing him a fresh 3-year, $24 million contract extension. He's the undisputed bell cow back, especially with sophomore back Jaden Blue struggling with maturity and practice habits after a rookie year where he only generated 129 yards. It's pure.
Let's look at the final macro projections for this 2026 season. The analytical models are highly polarized, but the mathematical path to the postseason does not require Christian Parker to field a top 3 defensive unit. Hank, break down the numbers on the concept of defensive regression to the mean.
It's pure statistical variance, Dwayne. In the modern NFL, a team that surrenders a historic anomaly like 511 points rarely repeats that catastrophic failure the following year, especially after switching schemes and upgrading personnel. Assuming baseline health for the offense, Dak Prescott, the dual alpha wideout room, and Javonte Williams running behind Tyler Booker practically guarantees a top 5 finish in expected points added per play. When you run advanced Monte Carlo simulations combining that top 5 offensive EPA with a defense that simply trends into functional mediocrity, say 14th to 18th in defensive EPA per play under Christian Parker, the win-loss distribution heavily shifts in favor of Dallas. The math says there is a greater than 70% probability that the Dallas Cowboys return to the postseason in 2026.
The baseline floor is 9-8, assuming the defense takes time to adjust to the 3-4 front early on, and we have to survive that brutal Week 15 matchup against the Rams and their newly acquired game wrecker, Myles Garrett. But the absolute ceiling is a dominant 13-4 record if Caleb Downs completely eliminates middle-of-the-field completions and the Quinnen Williams-Rashan Gary tandem generates a top 10 pressure rate. The schematic brilliance is there, the offensive floor is rock solid, and if the front office can navigate this looming financial iceberg, a deep playoff run is firmly within our grasp.
It is going to be a high-leverage, high-octane season, Dwayne. I cannot wait to see the pads come on.
That wraps up our exhaustive strategic breakdown for today's episode. Hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and tell us in the comments if you think Tyler Guyton can hold down the blind side in 2026. For Hank, I'm Dwayne, and this has been the 8 and 88 podcast. We'll catch you next week, Cowboys Nation.
This game's in the refrigerator, the door's closed, the lights out, the eggs are cooling, the butter's getting hard, and the Jell-O's jiggling.